The work these three gentlemen do is not the work of tomorrow, it's actually the work of today. Fidel's leadership of the Hispanic Scholarship Foundation, Jeff Rosen and Hadi, these three men, Hadi working on computer science for all students, Jeff on making the working knowledge of our Constitution his life's work. These are things quite immediate and ready. So that's the first thing, we named it wrong. So why don't we call it Partnerships for Now? Second problem, three gentlemen. I mean, after lunch, and three women glowing on this stage, really, these three guys are gonna come up in front and see what they got? I'll work with what I can only work with the material I'm giving. I'm just telling you. So, if the guys underperform a bit, we must have some kind of, can I say, mercy for the limitations of their sex. That will be a wonderful tweet that people will wonder about for generations to come. I can't wait to hear more about what people think about that. We at the College Board are making partnerships central to what we do. I hope many of you are sensing that. Because frankly, we are unable on our own to follow through on our mission to connect assessment to opportunity throughout everything we do and connect the work kids do to opportunity. That's always been true of the College Board in the most fundamental sense. That is, AP has always been a wonderful partnership between high school teachers and college instructors to make advanced placement happen. And then, of course, it's the acceptance of that AP credit by admissions officers. It's then our work with financial aid officers working on access. The College Board has always been about partnering with our members. But we've increasingly found that partnering with additional institutions in much deeper ways, like Khan Academy, for example, is essential to a properly humble and productive role for the College Board. Our aim, frankly, is to make these partners stronger, is to find a world in which the College Board has a role, not just in the work it does, but finding other institutions, emergent institutions, or increasingly established institutions, and to make them stronger as a responsible nonprofit to work together in this shared endeavor of delivering opportunity. Someone, a wonderful woman whose name I didn't catch, just walked up to me who works in rural Georgia. And as I've admitted to you, I'm not yet satisfied with the College Board's reach into the rural part of this country. And there's no way we're going to make headway in such a demanding problem unless we have the humility to admit that and think about what partners will we have that together we can bring to life these opportunities. It is really actually kind of stunning, the shared power that these three men's work, despite my caveats about their very nature. The combination of these three men's work is quite exciting. One of them brings technology to the Constitution, to an old-fashioned, and in American terms, ancient thing, as ancient as this country gets at least, bringing it to life again, but honoring some of the oldest things. Fidel, I think, in candor, is leading a revolutionary effort to celebrate excellence throughout his community and others that is all about engaging students in their work and helping them own their future. And Hadi has an ambitious and very timely agenda that is frankly sweeping this country. But I'd like you to pause, and I will introduce them a little bit more separately, to think about it together, to think about the combination of things, to think of a world where a student can explore the code of the Constitution and its mighty power in generating our country, and at the same time see their own power writing computer code and in computer science and designing a code that solves problems that they might not expect. These things are analogous and powerfully so. At the same time, through scholarship, we can make sure that work extends beyond those who have traditionally done it best to the Latino community, to the Black community, to Native Americans, to the white community in all its various forms. All these things are mutually reinforcing. With that in mind, if we can go on to the next page, I want to emphasize that these are some of the partnerships the College Board's embarked in. For example, we partnered a while ago with the National Science Foundation to create the Computer Science Principles course. And I know we have some of our friends from the National Science Foundation here. And I just want those colleagues that are here from NSF to please stand and be recognized for your immense help with the College Board in developing our Computer Science Principles course. Those partners in developing our work in this area include Project Lead the Way and others that extend our work, and of course to Code.org and others. But I want to be candid that all these things complement advanced placement, but without them, advanced placement can't do it alone. We have to be more honest about where our work is strong and where we need help, and I'm so grateful for it. Now, let me one by one bring these men onto stage, and if I can, embarrass them slightly in doing so. That's my secondary aim. Please, Fidel, would you march on stage as I talk about you? I find Fidel Vargas one of the most exciting people I've met since I've become president of the College Board. He believes unapologetically that the Latino community in this country must claim its role, earned through hard work as leaders in this country. If you corner him and he's in a candid mood, he will remind you that 93% of the Latinos in this country are legally and entirely citizens of the United States. That the conflation, the reckless conflation of the Latino community with immigrants is really just another way to make them other, to not fully include them in the American dialogue and conversation. So while we should be worried about doing more for undocumented students, I find that the Latino community is very lucky. They have such a leader and spokesman whose uncompromising view of reaching more and more students and offering them opportunities through his growing and increasingly excellent foundation that, by the way, the Hispanic Scholarship Fund has some of the finest technology tools that I've seen in the industry. So he's using technology that's most artful and scalable. He's really a visionary guy, and I'm glad to welcome him on stage. Thank you. Hadi, you've left so many worlds to do the work you're doing now. Famously, he left a world of silicon technology investing to enter a world of making coding and computer science available for all. He more dramatically left the world of Iran with his brother to escape to a sense of what I hope is a sense of democracy and freedom he finds here. I hope we haven't disappointed him in the country he found. But what I find so moving, and moving at this time when we seem all too suspicious of otherness, isn't it great? I mean, isn't it just great at this moment in our society that one of the people who is most driving the acceleration of America into the next century, the provision of computer science and the tools of the future into this country, is a man who came from a land far away, a world that in limited views we sometimes see as opposition to ours, but Hadi refuses those categories. He sees through it. He's on a mission. You've heard about an hour of coding throughout this country. This is a man with an idea, and a powerful one, and he comes to it with an amazing heritage. May I welcome him on stage? Jeff Rosen. Some of you may have seen him at APAC. Jeff is super nerdy. I'm always worried what he might do next, so I welcome him on stage with some anxiety, candidly. He might break out into song. Other things could happen for which I am not responsible. But he does all this while being one of the most skilled minds I've seen in the careful question of what things mean and what they might mean. Jeff thinks there's still a role for evidence in our society. He still thinks there's times when people from both sides of the aisle can look at something as complex and debatable as the meeting of amendments to our Constitution or the law itself and come to a common sense of what is shared, and then when they disagree. It is so daring and idealistic, you almost think he's the one who came from a different country than our own. I actually haven't. Have you seen a single political debate in this country where someone paused and said, here's the core that we share, now let's move on to disagree? I find it amazing. But it's only because Jeff has the kind of imagination to see in an easy simplicity a newfound center for the American conversation? Can we find, in a new look at the Constitution, into the disputes that gave it life? Let's remember at this time of discord in our society that America was born in big fights. And managing those fights, not eliminating them, and allowing them to contribute to a greater good is exactly what I think that Jeff's aim is in educating this society. Not to bury dissent, but to show us it in such a way we can learn from it and grow from it. And he makes this evident in his interactive Constitution. May I welcome him on stage? Now, to start, would you show us, Jeff, before you kind of get too settled, this interactive Constitution?
I couldn't possibly. If you
I told you he was unreliable, didn't I tell you?
If you ask very sweetly, I think I just might. And I would be delighted.
Excellent.
Okay, good. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not only willing to, but I'm thrilled to show you this new interactive Constitution. I gave some of you a preview of it during the AP conference in Austin. It's now live, and it is spectacular. We launched it on Constitution Day at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia with David and Justice Stephen Breyer, who looked at it and said, this is fabulous. We have to bring it to every student in America, and that's exactly what we have to do. So let me demonstrate it to you right now. You can find it on our homepage, constitutioncenter.org. You see the phenomenal partners, the College Board, the John Templeton Foundation, which funded it, and the Federalist Society and the American Constitution Society, the two leading liberal and conservative lawyers organizations in America, have come together, nominating the finest scholars to describe and discuss every clause of the Constitution, describing both what they agree about and what they disagree about. And as David said, I believe passionately, as he does, that this exercise of civil discourse really does have the potential to transform constitutional education in America. So let's go. Let's take a current question that's very much alive. The president decides tomorrow that he can fly a drone up in the air and single out anyone, say me, and track me 24/7 for a month, following all my movements in public. Would this violate the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, which protects the right of the people to be secure in our persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures? You can do three things with this incredible interactive Constitution. You can see the historic roots and the Revolutionary era state constitutions that the framers relied on in crafting those words. You can hear the best scholars in America describing their areas of disagreement and agreement in the present, and then you can trace the spread of that liberty across the globe, comparing American protections with those internationally. And I've been given 3 minutes to do that. I think let's see how we do. So we're starting with the Fourth Amendment. We go to Writing Rights, which is the first part of this great tool, and we click on the Fourth Amendment and get its text right here. If we click on, these are all the sources on which the framers of the Fourth Amendment relied. It's Kogan is the leading source, and we just inputted with our partners at Constitute at the University of Texas all of the Revolutionary era colonial and post-ratification constitutions that the framers relied on. If you start with one of the early constitutions, like the Delaware Declaration of Rights of 1776, you see a concern about general warrants, all general warrants to search suspected places or to apprehend all persons suspected without naming or describing the place are illegal and ought to be granted. This is right after the hated general warrants that authorized the king's agents to break into the houses of his critics and to read their private papers. But you see, as time progresses, if we get to the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780, Massachusetts, where James Otis in 1763 famously denounced the General Otis warrants and writs of assistance, you see the text looks much more like our Fourth Amendment. Every subject has a right to be secure from all unreasonable searches and seizures. 53% of the text matches, as opposed to, in the case of Delaware, mere 34%. And with this incredible tool, students can dig into each of the constitutions, pick any right they like, choose the Second Amendment, look and see which of the revolutionary constitutions viewed it as an individual and which as a collective right, and then trace the progress of that language through Madison's first proposal, through Congress, and watch the language evolved into the final Fourth Amendment that we know and love. A really wonderful opportunity not only for historic understanding, but also for close textual analysis that David and I hope will affect and transform the teaching of language arts. So that's the past. Now let's go to the present. This part of the Interactive Constitution was not live when I showed it to you last. We now have, for the first 15 amendments, and by next year we'll have done the entire Constitution, you can click on any amendment and get the best scholars on both sides writing about their areas of disagreement and agreement. I think it is incredible, and I've had people around the country, law clerks and judges and as well as students, just digging in and playing with it because it's so exciting to bring together these people who don't usually talk to each other. So for the Fourth Amendment, we click on it and we find Barry Friedman and Orin Kerr. Orin Kerr, my great colleague at GW Law School where I teach, Barry Friedman from NYU, Orin nominated by the Federalist Society, Barry by the American Constitution Society, first give you a common statement of the history. You can have confidence that this common statement is bulletproof because both sides have agreed on every word. It's like drafting a Supreme Court majority opinion. And it's exciting to see scholars agreeing about every clause. And the main story they tell is the one that I just flicked at and that we saw previewed in the Revolutionary Era constitutions, and that's the famous decision of Wilkes v. Wood, which you can click on and see the link, and then you can read the story of how Wilkes writes an anonymous pamphlet criticizing the king issues a general warrant to identify the author of the pamphlet, he breaks into lots of people's houses, identifies Wilkes sues in trespass and wins a historic verdict of £1,000 on the grounds that our private papers should not be searched without particularized suspicion. And we read that the colonists named towns and countries from Camden, New Jersey to John Wilkes Booth in their honor. But then you go to the matters of debate. I asked, would the drone be unconstitutional if it followed me 24/7? You can see Barry Friedman saying that yes, it would, because in his view, a central principle should be that searches aimed at particular suspects require warrants. Where there is a particular suspect, the protections of a warrant and probable cause apply. He feels differently when we're talking about general searches that apply to everyone. By contrast, Orin Kerr disagrees. He says that searches in public are generally permissible and the police can watch people in public streets or watch a suspect in a public place. He also believes that data that you turn over to a third party, like our geolocational records, is one that has no Fourth Amendment protection. So we've talked about the past, we've now talked about the present and seen areas of agreement and disagreement. Now let's look around the world. And in some ways, this is the coolest part, mostly because it has really pretty pictures, but also because it encourages students to compare US protections with constitutions around the world. So this is rights around the world, and we'll click on the Fourth Amendment, which talks about the collection of evidence. These countries in yellow are all countries that have some version of the Fourth Amendment. Let's pick a country. I'm going to choose Japan. And we click on Japan, and we see that when General Douglas MacArthur wrote the Japanese Constitution, he literally cut and pasted the American Fourth Amendment and stuck it right in there, word for word. So you see that 53% of the text matches. It's almost exactly the same, although interesting to compare the minor textual deviations. By contrast, if you click right above Japan at Russia, this huge country right above, you see that only 3% of the text matches, and it's this creepy prohibition against spouses not testifying against each other, and I am concluding to say that this is an incredible tool. I want your help in bringing it to every student in America, and thanks so much to David for sharing it.
And how much will it cost to access this magnificent tool that you're asking everyone to use?
Why, nothing at all. Just sign online. Don't do it now during the show, but you can get it on your mobile devices. You can get it on a tablet, constitutioncenter.org, free for every student in America and across the world.
Fidel.
Yes.
Well, isn't it fun to be
Wait,
you?
first I'll take 3.
Isn't it fun to be you these days? It's looking like the year of Latino leadership with, I'll say it, with Rubio and Cruz looking pretty good after that last debate. So I want to ask who you agree with politically, though it would be super fun if you want to answer that question in front of many of your closest friends. But I am very interested in what you think is the role of the Hispanic Scholarship Fund in bringing forth and cultivating Latino leadership in this country.
That is a really important question, so I'll stick to that part of the question. So, as David mentioned earlier, one of the things that gets lost in the debate is that, in fact, 93% of all Latinos under the age of 18 are US citizens. And that's important because that sort of frames the debate and the narrative of what we think and what we see, the demographic trends in terms of where we're heading as a nation. And for us at the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, and by the way, just a few little facts, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, right alongside Microsoft. We have now awarded over $500 million in scholarships to over 65,000 students and alums. And some of those people are people like Rosie Rios, the US Treasurer, Anthony Romero, the Executive Director of the ACLU, doctors, lawyers, astronauts, Congress members, a tremendous amount of talent that's contributing to this country. And what's important, really important for us, is to look at the future. And we don't like to say future leaders, we'd like to say young leaders. And so we're developing young leaders, the best and the brightest amongst us. This year we'll award about $35 million in scholarships to 4,500 students. And 65% of their students are attending the top 100 schools in the country as ranked by US News. So these are incredible students in STEM, half of them are in STEM, that we believe it's important not just to give them scholarships, but the kind of support and mentorship to help them build their careers and their views on leadership and giving back, because I think it's critical to the future of our nation.
And Fidel, if they're that good that they're going to our top 100 colleges, if they're that good, can you hear me?
Now you can.
Yeah. You're supposed to warn me before you start turning off my mic, really, guys. I said if they're that good that they can go to the top 100 colleges, why do they need help from you?
You know, they would do well, I think, regardless. I think what's critical, and I've had this conversation with David and others, in our view, and certainly in my view, I think sometimes we lose the importance of having to train leaders and create leaders. We assume that just sort of happens on its own. And as a nation, whether we are training leaders to go into politics or into science or into law, there is a training and a mentorship, an apprenticeship that in some ways has been lost. And so it's not just the scholarships that we give these students, and in fact, the majority of the scholarships that they're receiving or grants are coming from the institutions themselves. It's the support, it's the acknowledgement, it's the recognition, it's the mentorship that we're providing that we believe is making the real difference in accelerating their career paths and their path to leadership.
And if I can editorialize, I don't think anyone's ever entered an elite of the country without a network, without supporters,
Sure.
without mentors. To act like that doesn't happen is simply false. So I think it's terrific that you do that kind of cultivation. And by the way, the College Board has remarkable data that particularly in Latino community, there's something of a crisis of students not taking the opportunities they've earned, that despite them doing the work of academic preparation, they then don't apply broadly, they don't take advantage. So there's a ton of evidence that your work is urgent. Hadi, question on all of our minds. Is it for the love of money or a certain beauty that you devote your life to computer science? In other words, do you want every kid to learn computer science so they can all be rich developers? Or is there any other benefit to such training?
It's a great question. Before I answer, one thing I wanted to mention is, the last time the College Board brought me to this stage, and I wanted to thank you for having brought me to the AP conference literally 2 years ago. And back then, Code.org was a 5-person organization. Yeah. I'm not sure you guys even realized that.
You fooled us. We thought you were 10.
Yeah, but that was basically 2 weeks after we had come up with the idea for the Hour of Code, and we used the AP conference to announce this great idea of let's try to get every classroom in America to try 1 hour of code. It's now been 2 years. We're about to lead into our 3rd year of that campaign. We've had 100 million hours of code done in the last 2.5 years.
That's pretty impressive, folks, I gotta say.
Pretty insane. Thank you. And it is really thanks to it started with the stage that you gave us. And we're very, very excited about this year's Hour of Code campaign. Any teachers in this room who haven't already signed up to try the Hour of Code in their classrooms, whether you're a STEM teacher, English teacher, history teacher, doesn't matter. Spend 1 hour at least to help your children, your students get access to computer science. And also in the last 2 years since that's happened, over 90 school districts around the country, including all of the largest ones, have adopted computer science. It's almost doubled in enrollment in the AP program and become the fastest growing course for the College Board AP program, which has been amazing. In terms of my personal motivations, they have nothing to do with getting more developers, especially they don't have to do with helping tech companies hire more developers. Most people don't realize that 2/3 of the software engineers in this country work outside of the tech industry, at banks, at the government, working on mass transit, working at a retailer and entertainment. The software industry actually only hires 1/3 of the engineers out there. But either way, at most of all of your students, maybe 5% will become software engineers. But all of them are going to grow up in a 21st century that is being disrupted by technology. And when I went to school, both in Iran and in America, every kid would learn about photosynthesis or electricity or things like that. And I didn't plan to become an electrician, but school still taught me that in physics class. And I think for the exact same reason, every single child should learn about algorithmic thinking or how the internet works. It's just a basic thing that every child in the 21st century should just have as part of their well-rounded education.
Let's return to the emotional value of it. Talk to me about your time in Iran and what role computer science and coding had in your life and in terms of the life you were leading.
Sure. I had a somewhat undesirable childhood. When I was around 6 years old, I was living in Iran, and the country went through this Islamic revolution, and the government became this totalitarian regime. We actually lived about 2 blocks away from the main national television station, which I didn't realize would be an issue, but that ended up being a bombing target for Saddam Hussein's airplanes during the Iran-Iraq War. So from age 6 to 10, pretty much every single night, our electricity would be shut off and planes would fly overhead and try to bomb the TV station, and they'd have trouble doing it because they couldn't see anything with the lights being off. So it was not a great venue for growing up at all. But my life changed completely when my dad brought home a Commodore 64 computer that he'd imported from Italy. And he said, here's this thing. It doesn't have any games or any software, and you can't buy any software in Iran. But here's a book, and if you teach yourself how to code, you can make your own games and make your own apps, and here's your new toy. And so my twin brother and I spent all of our free time learning how to use this thing because there was really nothing much else to do. And by the time we came to the United States as 12-year-olds, we were really, really good at it. We came as an immigrant family that didn't have very much, but with this new skill, when my friends were getting summer jobs as busboys or gas station attendants, I was working in at tech companies, making probably 10 times as much money as a sort of underage 13-year-old coder.
Yeah, let's not talk about which those companies were and all that. Isn't it an amazing thing about America at its finest that the suffering of the world has a redemption and that it brought you here? So
absolutely.
I don't want to celebrate the bombing or the tyranny, but I do want to say we're very grateful you chose us as a home.
A key reason I'm doing what I'm doing at Code.org is that right now more schools in Iran teach computer science than in America. So more kids in that country get the opportunity that I had that our own schools aren't giving to our kids here.
Things that make you go,
Yeah, things that make you go.
I do think that one thing people can underestimate about coding and its force, or computer science, is its beautiful internal consistency and power. Have you noticed, for example, the number of men playing chess in the park who you wouldn't expect playing chess all day, who love it as a game they can master and escape the world and play in that territory? I think coding has a very special quality of building a world which you can inhabit, that you can change with your own hands, that's very unusual in the academic disciplines. And so it is a particularly empowering thing in a very special way. And I think that's one reason when you think about why must everyone learn this if not everyone's going to use it. There are very few arts that put you in the form of command that making commands does. And I find it a very moving thing. Jeff, what are your aims with this interactive constitution? Do you want a next American Revolution? Do you want to teach people to read better? Are you going to make for a better presidential election? What's your aim, and how will we know when you succeed?
The goal and the aim.
Small, ambitious aims.
Small, ambitious aims are to transform constitutional education in America and to create more knowledgeable citizens and better citizens. So when it comes to knowledge, we are excited that the College Board is writing teacher instruction manuals and a curriculum around the interactive Constitution. And we hope that all of you will use it in your classrooms. And we hope that students will score better on the AP exams in history and government and on the new founding documents part of the SAT as a result of using the interactive Constitution. But our goals are much broader. We also hope that this will be adopted not only for AP kids and SAT kids, but in classrooms starting in middle school. We are working with foundations to develop curricula that's Common Core aligned, and we hope that it'll be used to teach the new constitutional and civics requirement of the Common Core. So we hope that students who study this will do better on tests. But that's absolutely only the beginning of our goal. We want to create better citizens in this sense. Citizens in the sense that Jefferson and Louis Brandeis had in mind when they talked about the idea of self-education being a duty, and that the idea that we could only participate fully in American democracy if we were educated about the Constitution. So there are some sobering stats. 75% of Americans cannot name a single Supreme Court justice. 1% can name all 9. And there's another one that Kathleen Hall Jamieson from the Annenberg Foundation shared with me recently that struck me as significant. Citizens who know about the Constitution, who have historical and constitutional knowledge on both sides of the aisle, are less likely to call for the abolition of the Supreme Court, for the overturning of Supreme Court decisions by popular majority, and so forth. This applies both to libertarians on the right and to civil libertarians on the left. So constitutional knowledge makes citizens who are better able to compromise in the sense that Madison had in mind, and in the sense that American democracy relies. I'm a law professor, but I'm also an evangelist for the idea that the methodology of constitutional interpretation that lawyers learn is not for lawyers, but is for all students from 8 to 80. I think it's important that all of your students are able to distinguish between political and constitutional arguments, that they can read the text, they can identify the paradigm cases, like the writs of assistance we talked about that were behind the text, and then that they can articulate fairly the best arguments on both sides. And I do think it is very important in these polarized times to acknowledge that there are strong arguments on all sides of all of these constitutional debates, giving rise to majority opinions and dissents at the Supreme Court. I have faith. I have little constitutional discussions with my kids who are 9 years old, and they're pretty basic, but you can identify that drone example and have a good debate about text, history, precedent. I have faith in the ability of students of all ages to rise to that occasion. And finally, if that's not enough, I agree with you, David, and I'm inspired by your call to use this great tool to improve the teaching of language arts. I think that it's such a nonpartisan tool, and digging into the text with precision, tracing the evolution of words, understanding how crucially the selection of each word matters to American democracy is a beautiful way of teaching English and writing as well as history.
And I would, just interject, perhaps controversially, that since we're talking a bit and daring to talk about race and power and otherness and immigration and outside and inside, that there is no more surefire way to lay claim to your seat at the American conversation than to know these documents and know their power. For the Latino community, for the Black community, famous moments where Barbara Jenkins is the superintendent of Orlando who's here, but Barbara Jordan, the great congresswoman from Texas, it is when she demonstrated her command of these documents that she gained the overwhelming acceptance and broke through the barrier. So I have a special interest in giving all students from all backgrounds access to that power. Fidel, let's talk about your partnership with the College Board. In particular, Fidel is one of the leading scholarship organizations where we give the PSAT data to them, we share it with them through our search program, and they then find students and they interact with them. And we began that program with them intensively, and I'm curious what worked and didn't work.
So I don't know that anything didn't work.
Good answer.
And what I mean by that is that when you're using data that allows you to target where you're searching for talent and students, if you know how to use that data, and if you have a commitment to doing it and you have the people and the technology to do it, you're going to stir things up no matter what. So as we reach out to students and parents and families, letting them know about the resources of the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, the scholarships and the services, that touch point is something that didn't exist before. There wasn't a communication, whether it was by email or by text or by mail. We sent, for example, a snail mail to the parents of all the Hispanic recognition scholars in English and in Spanish, and we had parents calling us and, what does this mean and tell us more about it. A lot of those parents weren't in the loop before that. So again, I don't think that there was any failure. More than anything,
Didn't I hear about a website a crashing of a server? I don't know. I just have this haunting memory of it.
yeah, I wouldn't call it crashing, but no. I think that again, the fact that we have so many students, and then I'll just give you a couple of statistics. Last year we had 123,000 Hispanic students apply for scholarships with our new application. To put that in context, my alma mater, Harvard, had 35,000 applications, and the university had the most applications of any college was UCLA. They had 112. Our application is actually a little bit longer than the Common App. So that gives you a sense for the need of the students that are out there. About 25,000 of those students were qualified, and we were able to award 4,500 scholarships. So the demand is tremendous. One of the things that most people don't know, and again, it's back to the point about the narrative, and I will agree with David that we have lots of challenges that we have to face in the Latino community. But the reality is that Latino high school graduates are actually going to college at a higher rate than the general population now. So 69% of Hispanics high school graduates versus 67% of the general population are going to college. Today, about 19% of college students are Hispanic. And one of sort of my little teasers that I give, I asked the question, what would you say is the ratio of Asian American to Latinos in college today? And just whatever number came into your head. And the reality is that there are 3 times as many Latinos in college today than there are Asian Americans. And that's something that most people, and you'll come up after me and
This
say,
might be the one audience that knows this stuff.
maybe,
actually.
but I still am surprised because I was surprised. In fact, there's twice as many African Americans as there are Asian Americans, and it's back to perceptions,
Yes.
Which is another part of the challenge that we have to transform.
Briefly, and guys, I'm going to speed up because I see our time ticking down. So Fidel, though, don't you then have to reject so many people? Aren't you hurting them? You say like 125,000 sign up and 5,000 get it. What about those 120,000?
So 123,000 applied. We're hoping to increase that to 150,000 this year. And you're right, we're going to have to deny many of them. The beauty of the scholarship application is that we require every student to complete the FAFSA. So whether or not we give them a scholarship, many of those students would not have completed the FAFSA to begin with. And as all of you know, the majority of the financial aid and grants and loans that they're going to obtain to help them with their college education is not going to come from us. It's going to come from the institutions, the federal government, private financial institutions, as a result of them completing the FAFSA. So that is one of the things that we're doing. So even though they're not getting a scholarship from us, that's something that we're helping with. And then in addition to that, making the connection to HSF, to the content, to the information that we're sharing through technology. Our technology is mobile enabled, it's responsive, and in fact, I think it was 15% of our students completed their application on a smart device, on a mobile phone or an iPad.
So, Hadi, what would you say is the best analogy of computer science to the other disciplines? For example, I like to think about a Shakespeare play, like a computer code, a short program that leads to 1,000 possibilities of drama following from the lines. You might see the Constitution as a code. What are your favorite analogies to computer science?
It's a good question. One thing I first of all say is that computer science is much broader than coding. And in fact, people talk, our organization is called code.org. But if you think about computer science, it's broader in just the same way that English literature is broader than just learning about grammar or syntax in your language. But what you mostly learn in computer science is problem solving and system design. And in fact, I think becoming a computer scientist makes you a better lawyer. Every time I read a legal contract, it's a lot like well, no, it makes you better able to, it makes you better to deal with complicated things. Whether it's managing a large company, we actually had Mark Zuckerberg once tell us that managing Facebook to him is easier because he thinks systematically about the different groups doing things. We've had lawyers tell us that learning how to do computer programming helps them better figure out how this clause of a contract connects to that other one. So systems design and problem solving is something that I think everybody in this country will need in any profession, and it's something that you learn innately when you're trying to design a computer system.
How about the arts, design, the humanities, fields that feel under pressure today because of a vulgar career orientation led by people like you telling us we need certain skills to be more productive?
Actually, that's a great question. a key reason.
I thought it was more of an assault, but you can take it.
No. I love that question. I love that question. People assume the reason to teach coding is that everybody can become a coder. The reason to do it is computer science is both analytical like math and creative like the arts. It actually brings them together. So the kid who has a creative mind can start figuring out how to channel that creativity into writing an algorithm. The kid who has an algorithmic mind or a problem-solving mind can apply their creative thing. And also, it's simultaneously foundational and vocational. So it's great if you want to become an academic, and it can help you towards the best paying jobs in the country. So I think school has this challenge of which one should we choose, and computer science is actually the only field that brings those four things together.
Nice. Nicely done, sir.
Thank you.
Under pressure. Fidel, why only the Latinos? Why are you so convinced that your own people matter so much? What about the rest of us? What does the Hispanic Scholarship Fund mean to those who are not Latino?
So,
Or is it just all about you?
no, it isn't all about us. And so we're absolutely committed, frankly, and I might have said this before, my parents came here from Mexico. I'm the oldest of 8 kids, and I have a deep and profound love, admiration for our wonderful nation, and especially having traveled around the world and seen sort of the live version of those constitutions expressed. And I think that's something that we bring every day to the work that we do, and sharing that and ensuring that our students understand their responsibility to the country. And in addition to that, actually having scholarship programs that we administer. We administer now, I think, 7 different scholarship programs for clients where the students that we administer or award scholarships to are from every race and every background that there is, not just minority students. And so there is something to be said about developing that technology that's now allowed us to do that, and so we're going to continue to explore that. There's going to be a big announcement coming in a few weeks, and you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, well, that's exciting.
It is.
I'm excited. Okay, well, very good. Well, now it's time for your questions. And our time is brief, so I would love it if you will ask brief questions. I will discipline these people into giving you short answers. Okay. A lightning round. Follow the glow of the lights. There are 2 microphones in front here. There are runners in back with mics. We prefer provocative questions, more like attacks really than questions.
Attacks.
For these 3 people, I mean.
Oh, Twitter questions.
Questions.
We had a question on Twitter from Julie Brown Stachnik. So how can we collectively increase elementary school interest in coding?
I'll pass that to Jeff. No, Hadi, what do you think?
It's funny, there's a very simple answer to that. The reason we came up with the Hour of Code as a campaign wasn't because you can learn a field in 1 hour. 1 hour isn't enough to become a computer scientist. 1 hour is enough for your teacher and every single student to realize that this black magic voodoo art that you thought was only for 18-year-old white boys is something that even a 9-year-old girl, whether she's Latino or not, can engage in and love. And
That's good.
that her
Excellent
teacher-
answer. Next question.
Yes.
Is it from the Twitterverse or from a human
here's one.
being?
I can keep reading tweets.
No, there's one more. There's a
Have
question
one?
over here.
This question here, a living question.
Hi.
Yes.
What percentage of students who apply and receive your scholarship come from low socioeconomic backgrounds?
Great question. So I'll preface that real quick. Last year we went to a merit-based approach. So we said that we wanted to pick the best students regardless, because before we were waiting on socioeconomic status. And there was a little bit of concern. And what we believed was that it wouldn't change much and we would still get the best students, and in fact it has. So I think the number is about 80% of our students are Pell eligible or first generation students, which doesn't surprise me because the immigrant sort of first generation hunger for learning and is what's driven our country to be where it is today and what continues to refresh. We hit the refresh button every
The answer
10
was
years.
80%. Next question.
80%. I'm getting you back for when you were on my panel.
Revenge is sweet.
There we go.
Hello. Cecilia Marshall from the Asian and Pacific Islander American Scholarship Fund. This question is
Oh,
for...
welcome. I would like to say, if I may, since you're asking a question, that this Max Scholarship Fund, and you are one of our partners
Correct.
as well, and I just wanted to thank you for that and notice that really Fidel here represents a web of partnerships. National Merit Scholarship, of course, the foundation we began with, and they're a great longstanding partner, and then of course your foundation, and then the other scholarship funds that we work with, and the UNCF fund and others. But thank you for being here.
Fantastic. We're really excited to be a partner as well and to reach more students every year. The question is directed at Jeff, thinking about what other documents could be used with the same format in terms of the interactive learning.
It's a great question, and we do want to build this out over the next 3 years so that it's accessible to all learners and not just AP kids. So we are developing a partnership with Khan Academy as well to develop both audio and video around the explainers, which will unite the scholars, and they will suggest further documents and further reading. Also the historic component, and we're doing a special Supreme Court series as well of cases. So that's a crucial document, and obviously you should be able to click on to any amendment and see the relevant cases and relevant documents relating to that.
But it is kind of a beautiful and broader question. What document outside of the Constitution itself would be next for you to lavish this kind of attention and work on?
Well, you have to begin with the Declaration of Independence, because the relation between the Declaration, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights.
I was hoping like Wicked or something, kind of your favorite musical.
You know, I just saw Hamilton, and I would say the libretto for that
Yeah.
would be a very fine place to start, or Cherno's book. We do have a brilliant and incredibly incisive essay on the interactive by me and David Rubenstein about the relationship between the Declaration, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. But David has encouraged us to think about the documents that contributed to the global conversation that gave the Constitution life. So you want to begin in the founding era with what the founders read. We are digitizing the founders' library. David, I didn't tell you about this.
That's
it's so
pretty
cool.
exciting.
And we have both the actual copies of the books the founders read and then their annotations.
Jeff, I don't want people
text.
to know how nerdy I am about all that stuff. Keep quiet.
It's
We're in
so
public.
cool. No, I knew you'd
It
be
is
a psych
super cool,
president.
actually. It is
Completely
super- it is
thrilling.
super cool.
And all this stuff is in Philly. And then you'll just move it out there. I'm serious about this being a conversation with all of you and with the educational community. Let me know what would be useful to your students to help translate these documents from today until
But I
the
think
present.
those of you who love something and you think is worthy of careful rereading and examination, the notion that interactive techniques such as this, I think basically that what's so exciting about the interactive Constitution is it honors reading carefully and slowly, not this flashy distraction and interruption of concentration. And I think that if this works, we as the College Board will certainly think together with our colleagues about what else deserves this kind of attention. We have a question in back in the bleachers, please.
Todd Salmonson from Massachusetts. Not a lot of our students have computers at home. How accessible will these programs, Coding, Constitutional Center, even Khan Academy for apps for iPhones? They all have phones, but not so much computers.
I'm glad you asked that question, because I am delighted to announce that the College Board has recently released on the iPhone, and will within a week or two's time on Android as well, SAT Daily Practice, in which students will be able to download exams for free from the College Board, take a snapshot of their answers written with a pencil, get their results from us in 6 seconds for free, and be automatically logged into their Khan personal account. Yeah, it's groovy. So since kids already have their cell phone, they may need to buy a pencil. So we're right behind you in this. In everything we're doing, we're trying to acknowledge the reality that students are relying on their mobile phone. How about you guys?
Our tutorials also work on smartphones and on tablets. 50% of households have tablets, which is a very big number.
Lightning round.
We're developing an app for mobile and tablets this year. I want Hadi's advice about how to create it. We're willing to create a hackathon, possibly, for the best constitutional app, but we're in market, and we hope to have it launched by next year.
We surveyed the Latino community. 98% have access to smartphones, tablets. And so we built all of our technology to be responsive and web-enabled.
I will admit that the College Board's general web resources have some work to do in becoming more mobile friendly. That's a slight understatement, but we have made it our top priority in web development. So
We did an online survey, and then 100% of the respondents had web access. Say that.
that could almost have been taken as a sign of disrespect, sir.
It works 100%
no more
of
questions.
the time, 50% of
You
the
young lady.
Hi, I'm Sandra King. I'm from Ivy Tech Community College, which is the Community College of Indiana. And I'm interested actually in taking all of this information back to the state of Indiana. But how would I get for my students the 1 hour of code?
Oh, that is super easy. And anybody here who has students and has not tried the Hour of Code, Google it, search for it. It is very, very easy to do. Literally 100,000 teachers have already done this. There's resources, there's a how-to
Google
guide.
Hour of Code.
Yeah.
Great.
The how-to guide will take 5 minutes to read.
Jeff, how do they find your stuff?
constitutioncenter.org.
Fidel,
hsf.net.
everyone got it? Thank you. And bring it to Indiana. Bring some light. I say that because my good friends Pam and Todd are from that state. They can kill me later. It's getting close to that time where we begin to bring work to an end. Perhaps have a drink among friends or a Twitter question. Next question is the last one, however, and it is, do we have a Twitter question or a human question?
Twitter.
I can read another one from Twitter with quick answers. Interested in perspectives in how coding is expanding access to STEM for girls in ways we haven't seen before.
So we have, in our tutorials, we have 5 million students enrolled. 2 million of them are girls. So that's basically a 40% inclusion, which is huge. It's the first time you had that level of scale.
Let's say a word about the College Board's intentions here. We will do everything we can to propel and make accessible to you this work. For example, with Girls Who Code, we find our PSAT 8th and 9th grade test predicts very well success in coding environment. And guess what? If you saw the lunch panel, who does better on that test? Girls. And still, though, we see sometimes in coding courses 2 or 3 girls to 7 guys, in full courses I'm talking about. So what we're working with Hadi on is making his course more widely available with those districts and then using the data to propel more girls into this opportunity early and often. I think we have to be very careful with girls in coding that it is a devotion. It is not, while this taste is exciting of an hour, when we look at young men like Hadi and others, it is an almost nerdy, obsessive thing, much like Jeff Rosen in the founding documents and his obsessiveness. Almost an unhealthy looking thing, this kind of devotion. But something we have to be more honest, I think, with kids. But the College Board will make the interactive Constitution available throughout AP History, throughout AP Government, throughout Khan Academy, because as you know, we've announced on every PSAT and SAT, there will be a founding document or the great conversation it inspires. And I bragged about or mentioned the servers crashing because our partnership with HSF has been so exciting in and scholarship funds like it, in expanding the reach of their work through all the students taking PSAT. Of urban children in this country, 80% are now taking a PSAT. So I am really excited at the idea of uniting assessment with meaningful opportunity, with things that are beautiful in and of themselves and lead to other things, to coding as an art and a science, to the interactive Constitution and the role it allows us to participate in our society and in the globe, and to scholarships and opportunities to lead. Our assessments alone are not enough. Assessment without opportunity is dead. But with these kinds of partners, the College Board can share very powerful things. Thanks for your attention. Have a great evening. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, David. That was wonderful.